Okay, for this tutorial we're going to be creating a animation using the 12 principles of animation. So this is going to take a bit of time and a bit of patience with it, but we're going to use like arcs, exaggeration, a little bit of pose to pose, squash and stretch to get the right animation, but this will take a while, so just be prepared for that. So we're going to create a new animate file, HD, 24 frames, ActionScript 3.0, and create. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a character from scratch. I'm going to spend some time building the character. We'll make the animation of him turning his head first, and then we'll apply some 12 principles animations to make it even better. Alright. So what we need to do, we need to make our head first. So we need to make this layer. We're just going to call this head. And what we're going to do, we're just going to choose our oval tool, and we're going to have no fill, and we're going to use the stroke this time. So I'm just going to put his head as big as I want on the right hand side of the screen. We'll start from his right going to his left. So we'll put a head like that. So it's a bit overly shaped. We can make that a little bit thicker as well. Change that style. Make it a little bit thicker. So we've got our head, which is great. Now we need to have eyes, a mouth, and a nose. Okay, so we're going to add a new layers for these. So we're going to go. So we're going to name this our mouth, eyes, and nose. We're going to keep it really simple. There's no need to make a really complex animation. So we're going to make our two eyes, which is just going to be using the pen tool here, just like Illustrator. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So make sure I have my eyes layer clicked. I'm going to put one there. That's going to be slightly bent. And I'm going to do the same. So undo that, and then do the same thing. Again. So he has two eyes. Good. I might make that a little bit bigger. And I can resize this one by using the resize free transform tool, just to make it all about the same size. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to get his nose about to start. Just going to make this as straight as possible. So now I'm going to do his nose, which will be quite big. So I'm thinking that to that, and then bringing it back down. Make a rather big nose. Don't mind about the line going through. It's just a practice. So it's got a big nose. I might shrink down the head size a little bit and make that a little bit smaller. It's just a bit too big. Make all the stroke about the same. About 5 or 6. Okay. And we're just going to do a really simple mouth of just a line on his mouth. So we're going to click the mouth layer. And again, I'll just use the pen tool to make a little curved mouth. So we got our character. Okay. Really simple one. I can move that eye a little bit. I think it's a bit unnatural where it is. So thinking about the actual face anatomy. So the line straight down the middle here, or slightly curved, and then the same across. So I think that's about a good place for my eye. Maybe a little bit lower. Maybe a bit higher than that. Alright, so what we're going to do first, we're going to get the animation of it moving from here to all the way over to the side here. Now I'm going to start with the head. Now I want it to take maybe about a second to get to the point that I want. So I'm going to take 1 second. I'm just going to put a keyframe on that second and click and drag it to about here. And then I'm just going to insert frame for everything else. Okay. At the moment there's no motion to it, so it's just going to flick straight to it. So we're going to put a little classic tween in there. Just put a classic tween in it, so it should get to that motion. If I press Control Enter, we've got the head moving. Now I'm just going to put a pause at the end of it, so it's going to take another second. So I'm just going to insert the keyframe, and that's just going to do that. I'm not even putting a movement into it. It's just so it holds for a second. Alright. I'll just put my frame in there as well. Okay, now I've got to move the eyes, and the nose, and the mouth. Okay. Now the mouth is probably going to be one of the easiest points. So I'm just going to grab this, insert keyframe, and I'll just move it to here. Now we remember we're going to be looking the opposite direction. So we've been looking to his left. Now I want to make it look to his right. So now if I put a classic tween there, and I press Control Enter, the mouth should be following it. And it looks like he's turning his head. Now I'm going to do the eyes. I'll do the eyes next, because the nose is probably going to be our hardest bit. Alright, so I'm going to put a keyframe in here. I'm going to move the eyes all the way to this side. Now, what have I noticed is that my eyes are tilted the other way, so I'm just going to transform them and flip them horizontally to make them go the way that I want them to go. And then I'll just create a classic tween. So that should hopefully move them slightly. Now, notice that right at the end they flip. I kind of want that to happen earlier. So I might move this keyframe, or make a copy of that keyframe. In about here, I'll insert a keyframe, and I'll just flip him here. I'll make it just do it a little bit earlier. About the center of when he was, like when his face is about to be in the center, just to get that similar look. So at the moment that would be front on. So that should hopefully fix that issue. Nope, they're doing a rotating twist. We don't want that. So I might just grab my direct selection tool. Actually, my pen tool might do it. Insert keyframe. Just at this frame. So I've just gone inside of the animation, and I'm going to try and manipulate it here with using the direct selection tool, just selecting some of it, moving it to a certain point, maybe transforming it. I'm just deleting some unnecessary bits. I'm just selecting a small amount of it. I'm just trying to get that dead straight on. Now if I go back, it hopefully fixes that animation. So it looks like now it's slightly moving. I only want it very minimal. I don't want it to be crazy. So now that I've got a dead straight on, I've got one that's looking to the side a little bit, which I might try and make look a little bit more to the side to really emphasize the movement. Coming to the middle and then off to the side again. I'll move that to that side. So now if we play our animation, Control Enter, we can see we have our eyes moving, our mouth moving, and now we need to do our nose. Okay, so what we're going to do with the nose, we've got to do a similar thing to our eyes. We're going to do some key poses. We've got that pose, we've got one that's in the middle, dead straight on, and then we'll have a pose that will be on the opposite side. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make the last one first, because I'm going to just take the same nose, transform it, and flip it horizontally. And I can put it just straight into position. Then I'm going to come back to this nose here. And about the same spot as where the eyes are, I'm going to put a new keyframe. And I'm just going to shrink down my nose to be sort of like it's moving into the middle. And you still got a little bit of depth, not a lot. Just to get that front on. I'm going to squash and stretch it a little bit, because I squashed it down. I need to pull it out, and then now I'm going to put a classic tween onto that. So hopefully, if it did the right thing, which it didn't, I should be able to get that motion. Now I think the problem is, so remove classic tween, I might need to try do a motion tween. Now this is where like a little bit of trial and error comes into it. You're never going to get anything working the first time. It's fine to have an error and then trying to fix that error. So I'm going to clear these keyframes. Clear that keyframe. I'm just going to put insert keyframe here, and I'm going to do all. Now again, I'm just going to select the nose, transform it so it's flipping horizontally, and I'll just put it there. Okay, so now it's got that motion, and now it has that nose that I want. So the motion tween did it for me. Made it a hell of a lot easier, and now the eyes probably could have done that as well. So we can change that very quickly. Clear keyframe, and that's our end position. So remove the classic tween. Gonna put a motion tween in. I'm just gonna put insert a frame. I didn't need to duplicate the whole frame. I'll copy that frame. Remove frames. Oh, sorry. Insert frames. Clear keyframe. Insert a keyframe. Or, and I'm just going to do it here. I'm just going to go now. Transform. Flip horizontal. And I'll move him into position. Okay. So now we have our animation of him head turning without any principles in it. Now the eyes seem to switch over for some reason, so we're going to have a look at what that's all about. Something's happened with its flip at this spot here. So we might add some keyframes to stop that from happening. Insert keyframe. All. We'll keep those separated. Go again here. Insert keyframe. All. Stop that from separating. And again, insert keyframe. All. Keep them from separating. It's a weird animation happening. It's a keyframe. All. Get the edge. There you go. I might remove this keyframe because I don't think it's doing what I want it to do. So we're just going to clear this keyframe and we'll just go again. We'll go insert keyframe, or, and we'll just move it straight in. If I can grab it. Again, just move it into position. Try to keep it in a straight line. And there you go. So if we play that now, cool, we have a motion of a head turning. So hey, just the importance of doing it. I just use classic tweens on the head and the mouth just because they're not doing anything else other than moving. When I start having more motion in my movements, that's when I put a motion tween on, which adapted it for me because it simulated those keyframes a hell of a lot better. Alright, so now what we need to do, we need to start making our 12 principles of animation into our head turning, so it's not just a simple head turn. As in, whenever we turn our heads, we never do it in a straight motion. We have a little arc to ourselves. So what we're going to do, we're going to add a little keyframe for everything. Just a little one, straight down the middle. We're going to add an arc to our animation. We're just going to add a keyframe. And we're just going to tilt down. Notice how I'm just using the arrows and just doing a little mini motion to create the arc of a motion. And that's applying arcs to our animation. Notice how there's a little dip, just a bounce into his step, bounce into his turning of his head, but just making it very, very simple. Now the motion is pretty smooth. Now we could add some features in terms of how the head's gonna, like the head, maybe add some dramatic emphasis to the end of the head turning, making its velocity a little bit more. So we're going to try that. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to the end keyframe here we're going to go maybe 3 or 4 keyframes. And we're going to insert a keyframe. And we're going to move everything just slightly up and diagonal. Just slightly. And then what we're going to do, we're going to go back to our resting position. So you can just highlight these keyframes, copy frames, and about the same distance, 3, and paste those back in. Okay, so the ones that classic tweens, we need to add motion. Classic tween, classic tween, classic tween, classic tween. Now if we watch our animation, it's a bit jaggy. So we need to have a look at what that's doing and where that's happening. So it's here. So that's its resting position, that's its above position. I don't know why I added a keyframe in there. We're going to clear those keyframes. Alright, so now we can watch that. Maybe a bit too jaggy on the actual lift up. So click on those all again and slightly bring it down. I didn't get the eyes and the head or anything. I'm going to put onion skins just so I can see where it is. I'm going to select all these keyframes. I'm just going to move it ever so slightly so it looks like that. So hopefully that gets the motion I want. Just a little flick up so he can have a little bit of motion into it. Alright, so let's add some features to say like the mouth and the eyes. We can make the eyes maybe blink at halfway and then reopen. Let me get rid of onion skin. So we're going to come to this keyframe. We're going to go to the eyes. And all I'm going to do is literally just shrink down the eyes to make it look like he's blinking. Maybe stretch him out a little bit. Not a lot. So we can see what that looks like. I'm just going to make it look like he's blinking. Now if you had eyebrows here or eyelids, it could make it a little bit more obvious what's happening. Because I got this weird flick at the end of my eyes, it's made it a little bit weird. But I don't mind that too much. Because we're going to remember that we're not actually going to see a lot of change happening. So I'm just going to, I'm using this like tilt slide kind of thing that's inside of the motion. Just deciding if I want to do it. And I can tilt it a little bit, but it doesn't seem to be doing what I want it to do, so I probably won't do it. I'm just testing out different features, seeing what can happen. But that should give us a little bit of motion to look like he's blinking. It's not the best. If my lines were straighter, it would have made it a lot easier because I could have just made it straight down. We could also change our mouth. So it gets smaller when it gets into the middle. Now, I'm just going to click on the mouth. I'm going to go to that middle keyframe. I'm going to shrink it down. And then it should come straight back up. All I did was shrink it down. Now, if the motion was a little bit quicker, if I remove some of these frames, because it seems to be very slow at times, clear frames, remove frames. I'll just remove some of these frames too. We won't see some of the errors that are inside my animation. It becomes a lot quicker and just as good. Now what I could do is add eyelids to my eyes that appear and then disappear. We could see how that goes. So I might make a new layer. We're just going to try something, see if it works. I'm going to add eyebrows or eyelids to about here. So insert a keyframe. I'm going to name them eyelids. Now I'm not going to have the eyelids showing the whole time. Like they're going to come in and come out. And they're not going to be showing the whole time. So I'm just going to delete that. I'm going to have an eyelid. That potentially could help with making the eyes look like they're closing. If I do it right. Let's go zoom in. I'm going to make it go on the top here. I'm going to make it less crooked. I'm going to make it go across the whole eye. Maybe tilt it a little bit. I'm just going to copy and paste. And then I'm going to go here. Just moving to the middle keyframe. And I'll move these eyes down to here. Eyebrows down to here. Oh, eyelids, sorry. And then probably about here. I'll do another eyelid just before they disappear. Just gotta make sure I get the right selection. Yep. And then put them here. And then I'll remove them by here. Maybe here. Insert, and I'm just going to delete. Alright, so we've got some issues now because we haven't put our classic tween on. We're just going to use a classic tween because we're just moving. So it shouldn't be a problem. Now I'm going to reinsert that frame. Insert keyframe. Oh, sorry. Paste frame. Move that to here. Then insert another keyframe and remove from there. And remove this classic tween because there's no need for it now. Alright, so that should allow us to have some eyelids to come in. And it makes it a little bit more natural. Looks like he's about to blink or is blinking. Maybe I'll go down with a little bit more of his eyes in the middle. So I'll shrink his eyes even further to make it really look like he's blinking. And then bring it back. So it looks like he's now blinking. The mouth's moving. It's like squinting his mouth. The nose is flipping across. And he's now getting a lot more features. And this is just adding some 12 principles animation. Now, I'm going to fix the nose in terms of we're going to have a little bit of a secondary action happening. So when we tilt our head up, just a little bit, we're going to have the nose keep going a little bit further before coming back to its resting. Because the nose is a weighty kind of thing. So we're going to clear that keyframe, clear all of it. So it should be clear keyframe all. Doesn't seem to be doing what I wanted to do. I'll come back to this. Because it's a new motion tween. Alright, so I'm going to keep the nose up a little bit more and then bring it back. So I'm just going to refine. Sorry, I didn't mean to press that. I'm going to remove the motion tween. I'm going to just remove some of these frames so it's back in line. And then I'm going to remove this keyframe because I didn't want that. I've moved my keyframe a little bit more, so the nose is coming in a little bit later. Insert a keyframe, and then I'll bring it back into its position. Alright, so he's coming a little bit later than everything else. Just for that end bit. So I see there's an issue here in the middle. The nose is a little bit off, so I'm going to see what that's all about. So I don't know why that's moved so much. Let's fix that keyframe. Still very off here, so I'm just going to move it a little bit more across and maybe up a little bit. Try that. And I'm just adding some features to it. So he's also pausing on the final action, so you get to see what that final action is. He's getting some animated features. His nose is weighty because it's a big nose, so it finishes the action after the head's finished the action. And that's just very simple 12 principles of animation, just to make a really simple character turn, to make it more lifelike and using those principles that we've been learning. So what I want you to do is to make that action, I want you to create something that he's looking at. So like you can make a bird that he's flying, that flies across the screen, and then he looks at it. And then I want you to submit that as an SWF file into Google Classroom.